Hello, everyone. Today is Monday, March 4th. My guest today is Shahriar Afshar. Shahriar is a former public servant, a member of Verizon Network, and currently the founder of Evergy. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Shahriar.
Thank you, thank you. And I left Verizon last year after 5 years. I figured 25 years in government and 5 years with Verizon, 30 years of working for somebody else was enough. I wanted to kind of scratch my entrepreneurial itch. I've always had an entrepreneurial itch ever since I remember. Even through government, I always looked around me to learn from what many real estate titans and big corporations were doing. That was the best part. If I can make a pitch for public service, uh, even for a couple of years, if you can work for a government agency, whatever level, federal, state, local, nonprofit, even, you learn so much about how things work and how things come together, especially deals. So once you, especially with my 15 years with the port, once you look at how big corporate deals, like building a $500 million convention center, which is I was in charge of that, or $200 million hotels, $50 million renovation projects. You get to see how these things come together, and you get to be in charge of very complex things very early in life. Government does that. In private sector, not so much. But government, because of your role, your title, you suddenly become in charge of something at a very young age, and you get to learn a lot. So if I can make a pitch to try out that government experience, I did it for longer than I thought I would. I started at 19, and I left after 25 years. And then when I left, I wanted to try. I've always been fascinated with innovation, technology, and that bridge of public-private partnerships and how innovation technology comes together on public projects and what have you. So I kind of went to Verizon for 5 years, and I learned a lot from there. What they did and how my job, for the most part, didn't change too much. I was still dealing with a lot of community engagement issues and land use issues and real estate issues, and bringing technology. In this case, it was 5G and broadband to various communities and how that works, the contracts, the logistics, the permitting, the legal stuff. All that stuff was what I was doing when I was in government. So changing seats to the private sector with Verizon, my role didn't change that much at all. It was kind of the same thing. I just changed my seat, I guess, reoriented. And 30 years of that, I said, you know what? I like to do my own thing. And I'll just tell you, Evregy, EV, real estate, energy, those are the acronyms that I slapped together. I wasn't trying to be smart. I just wanted a short domain name I didn't have to think too much about. Was really, it was a reminder of what I was trying to do. I was trying to bridge the real estate, energy, and EV world, because that's what I was familiar with. So that's kind of, I started that last year serendipitously, and I'll be quiet so you can ask me whatever you want. But just following a dream, owning my own business and being an entrepreneur after 30 years of working for somebody else.
Wow. And, just to go to the naming of it, when I first, read it, I thought of energy, but with the V instead of the N.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I don't know. I don't know if it was such a smart idea to name it what I did. I do know I was trying to have a one-word domain
Yes.
because I'm kind of restless, and I didn't want to type like 13 words for a domain name. I know Evergy, not Evregy, but Evergy flows off the tongue easier. And
Yes.
Evergy happens to be a power company in the Midwest. So if you type in Evregy, Evrgy, like my domain name, my company name, Google will ask you, did you mean Evergy? And then you go to Evergy, which is a power company in the Midwest. So I know I wasn't that far off from a naming convention. Somebody is producing power and selling it to Midwest households. It's called Evergy. So Evergy is just my my contribution to the cause. Again, it's also a reminder to myself that this helps me as an entrepreneur, what my focus is. Right? It's a constant mission statement in my face. EV, real estate, energy. That's my
Yes.
focus. And I learned when I was forming Evregy is that as an entrepreneur, it's easy to get distracted. You
Yes.
can chase so many rabbit holes. Like what is that movie, The Founder? You don't know what business you're in. Am I in the real estate business? Am I in the energy business? Am I in the EV business? It focused. My niche is strictly delivering site hosting to EV, and now you can add solar to it, but EV or clean energy providers, companies, what have you. I'm not trying to build a faster EV. I'm not trying to build a better Tesla. I'm not trying to solve energy problems. I can't deal with climate. All I'm trying to do is solve this simple site access, site hosting issue for EV, and it's become naturally an extension to also add solar into it, because a lot of EV companies are discovering EV alone isn't going to pay the bills. They need solar tax credits and integration with solar to make it work.
Okay. So the tax credits for solar help are assist, and do they also get power from the solar to charge the vehicles, or?
So there's several different ways of looking at it. So solar alone typically isn't enough to really power EV demands. Once you go into DC fast charging, so there, you can have enough solar panels, but it won't be cost effective. The space won't work. You'll need 100 solar panels to, it won't work. But I will tell you, in San Diego especially, there is a company that's getting a lot of traction. It's called Beam Global, which is a solar kind of plug and play solar panel. Looks like a Star Trek ship to me, but literally they just come and install it on wherever you want, in your parking lot, in your backyard, wherever you want. And it has battery storage and solar panels for it's level 2 charging. It's not DC fast charging. It's not Tesla. It's level 2 charging. But it's pretty cool that you can just go and slap solar anywhere. It does level 2 charging, so it takes several hours for a full charge, overnight sometimes. But it's a good token thing to have. No permitting, no construction, no utility permissions, nothing. You just go and plop it there. Not everybody can afford $100,000. That's what it costs, about 75 to 150, I think, $100,000 Beam Global thing. And of course, if you add more plugs to it, like if they say it can take up to 6, it slows down a little bit. But you get tax credits from that because it's solar installation. It's level 2, so you would need to charge it for a couple hours, maybe charge it overnight. But they're getting a lot of government contracts because the government likes the ease of plugging it into a parking lot in a Caltrans or City Hall or what have, federal government. They just like the ease of it. You can just buy it and you put it there, and you know what? You change your mind, you can always move it. It just folds like a transformer. Anyway, that's just one example. I like to plug San Diego company because I'm in San Diego, but other models are integrating, solar charging stations. So instead of a gas station, you need an acre or two for a lot of solar panels, and then just like a gas station, you kind of roll up. It's being probably fundamentally charged by solar panels, although probably in some areas you need the grid to supplement it because it won't be enough. Those types of places may end up like solar gas stations. They may end up to be in between urban areas. So in between, let's say, I don't know, San Diego and Palm Springs, or Palm Springs and Vegas. Those areas where you could have 2, 3, 4, 5 acres of desert land for solar farms, and you can have a EV station right there. That's definitely, multiple companies are working on that to bring that technology without having to plug into the grid. That's a big shift in the industry.
Okay. Are there any challenges the industry is facing?
Personally, and I always tell government agencies this, from just strictly from a site hosting perspective, there aren't enough incentives for a landlord to put aside their property for EV charging stations, right? Like you get 30 some odd percent tax credit if you add solar to your home or to your property or what have you in California. But there are not enough government incentives. I mean, there are Cal EV, EVIP and NEVI. Those are the two, Cal EV of California, NEVI is federal. Based on certain proximity to freeways for NEVI and other criteria for Cal EVIP, you get credits for construction of the EV charging station, not for giving up your otherwise developable land to build. So from a site, again, I'll get to the larger concerns about EV charging stations in a minute, but from a landlord perspective, if I have, let's say, I don't know, a 5,000 square foot parcel in a middle of an urban area, all development incentives and density bonuses that come into play for let's be affordable housing far outweigh the ROI to build an EV charging station. An EV charging station is a long-term ROI, 5, 6, 7 years, most, if that. And then you're subject to, of course, fluctuations in the utility price. When you build an apartment building, you're subject to the construction costs at that moment. But when you build an EV charger, you're subject to the utility costs that could go up and down. So now you're dealing with market forces that are out of your control. So it's really hard to make that work. What I've observed is a lot of EV companies are trying to group, first of all, keeping their land costs low, but they're trying to group their model next to something else that has retail components. So EV charging station and a coffee shop, EV charging station and a car wash, laundromat, Not every company wants to do that because most EV companies are in the EV business. I'm in the real estate business that happens to cater to EV. So I'm looking for sites that work for EV charging station and the laundromat and a charging and a car wash, retail, because I have the flexibility to do both. Whereas EV companies, let's say EVgo, ChargePoint, they're strictly trying to focus on the EV technology. Now, within that silo, there's lots of problems. The software goes down. The connector doesn't work. Sometimes parking lots for EV chargers are not the most inviting places to go. It's kind of desolate. There's no bathrooms. So unless they park, they're built it in a shopping center where that shopping center is open, you're kind of, So there's lots of accessibility problems. And of course, Tesla standard not matching with the rest of the North American standard. They're trying to address that to make it universal. And of course, there's not enough charging stations. When I started this a couple of years ago, I Googled it. You can Google it too. How many gas stations are there in this country? 150,000. How many EV charging stations do you need? Let's say by 2030, which is what California's mandate is. Not mandate for EV charging, but mandate that all new cars be EV or zero emission. Could be hydrogen, could be something else. You need something like 500,000 to 1 million EV charging stations. So the logistics and the barriers to entry and the land access and the site hosting and the impact to the power grid, they're enormous.
Yes.
They're enormous. That's why people are right now, at this minute, as of the date of this recording, lots of people are getting turned off by EVs. And that is probably the number one challenge facing the industry. People getting turned off by buying an EV because of all these problems I just mentioned.
Okay. They're still going up, though, I think. I don't think EVs are going anywhere besides.
I agree. But it's not because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and I believe it or whatever. I even bought a Tesla when I started Evregy. I said, "Damn it, I can't be doing this and not have an EV." And here's now another article on the price drop of Tesla. It doesn't matter. I'm still driving it. It gets me A to B. I have solar in my house. That's a big factor in deciding to go EV. I mean, I absolutely hated going to any gas station and paying $6.50, $7 for super unleaded. I hated it. And I just said, I'm not doing this. And then anytime I had a gas, Jiffy Lube and all the other problems with the combustion engine, I said, that's it. I just want a golf cart that gets me to A to B. And anytime I want, I can just plug it into my house with solar charging. So not everyone can do that, but I solved my problem that way. You're going to have more problems with as adoption continues to grow. Developers are building less and less apartment buildings with parking. And if you build apartment buildings with no parking, you're surely not going to have room for EV charging. So what are people going to do? That's kind of, at least in San Diego or high density urban areas where you have an incredible amount of affordability issues. You need to kind of reconcile these two public policies. So one public policy says, build more advanced EV charging and EV adoption. Another public policy says, build more affordable housing. The only way you can build more affordable housing is not to build parking. In Southern California, parking lots cost money. And as unit sizes are going slow, you almost can make the case that every single parking space is taking away a livable unit.
Wow.
Right now, I'll give you a scale. What's a typical parking space? About 220 square feet, 250 square feet, give or take. It's about 8 or 10 feet by 25 feet or so, give or take. Some cities have different parking spaces. Right now, today in San Diego, buildings are going up in Hillcrest and urban cores in San Diego with no parking and with 220 square foot units with a Murphy bed that falls down from the wall. And those units in Hillcrest area right now, I know a building under construction, is being rented for $1,800 a month. No parking. So those two infrastructure issues are going to conflict, where developers are being incentivized to build affordable housing and these micro units, 220 square feet, with a fold-out bed from the wall, and the other public policy objective of building more EV charging stations and pushing people to adopt EVs, right? So that's happening. That conflict is unfolding around us as we speak right now.
That's a really interesting point that you bring up, and I didn't understand it before. I knew someone who, one of my coworkers in the previous job, he had he invested in parking lots, and he owned several parking lots. And I didn't realize that there's an economy and economics behind a parking space and parking lots, but it's pretty obvious when you consider where, there are massive parking lots in the most dense and highest value real estate in California, definitely.
Right.
And
we didn't come here overnight. It took a few decades. So some of the buildings we live in and work in, let's say in Southern California and San Diego, 40 years ago, the requirement may have been, let's say for a hotel along the San Diego waterfront, the parking requirement was 1 for 1. That means one suite, one parking space. I mean, the thinking back then was that you would drive to your hotel, not fly in and get dropped off by a taxi. So now you got all these hotels, the older hotels, that have these massive parking lots, office buildings, massive asphalt parking lots. When people have changed the way they work. I mean, look at the gig economy. I mean, people are working from home. They're working from Starbucks. The office space market is just going down fast. Nobody wants to go to a gray cubicle 8-10 hours a day in some urban, fight traffic, God knows what, to get to your work. They like to, with Zoom, and look at what we're doing right now, they want to have a better quality of life, and they don't need the pension or the box or the 2.3 kids or the 2-point mortgages, whatever. They have these side hustles and different gigs that they can manage, and the AI is going to change. So that office space, whatever I grew up with, working 25 years for government, going to downtown, parking in a parking space, going up to a cubicle for 25 years, that sounds depressing. That's why that movie Office Space resonated with so many people. Nobody wants to do that. And COVID changed the way we think about work, and it has changed the way we think about transportation. So opportunities, good or bad, are unfolding around us when it comes to how do we, as entrepreneurs, as social entrepreneurs, people that are interested in clean energy and ESG, right, environment, social governance. How do we meet that demand, that new evolving demand? And like kind of what you're talking about, and what I'm interested in is, how do we bring EVs to communities, to HOAs, to where people live? How do we integrate that solution to where people live already, which is probably going to be where people work too. I don't know what the percentage is. Look at any apartment building. If you did a survey of any apartment building, 20, 30, 200 units, how many people no longer go to a work environment somewhere else, 20 minutes away? How many people work from home or satellite or something else? So that now is a different problem to solve than the transportation corridor and the traffic patterns and all those things that say local transportation agencies have to figure out. Now that's the problem is people live and work from home, except some percentage, a growing percentage. How do we accommodate the clean energy transition in those HOA communities or where people live, so they can also charge and go do their other activities, recreation, take their kids to school, something else, go shopping. That's the challenge, I think, for entrepreneurs. How do we meet that demand?
That's a huge challenge, and it's a challenge for HOAs themselves. Many of them don't, have very strict budgets, and even when you talk about EV adoption, say it's a 200 or 300 unit community, there may be 10% of that community that has EVs, and there's going to be a, you know, gradual adoption of who is willing to purchase one. Now, I think if there's an existing infrastructure and I think many people are deterred from it who live in communities, HOAs, because there's no existing infrastructure. They see that, they see it would be, just a logistical nightmare. But if they were able to have that infrastructure there, if and again, it has to be gradual because most of the community does not have EVs, um, in most communities. And so adopting that and implementing that would be, how is the HOA, the association, going to take on that responsibility? And that's not very obvious. s- you know, who's going to get the first ones? Obviously, they're going to be EV owners. And if they do get the first ones, is there any sort of requirement for that? Or what is how is their parking rental space going to be increased? What's the pricing for that parking rental space versus a non EV charging space? Those are not obvious questions, or the answers to those questions aren't obvious.
Right. And for the most part, I feel like multifamily HOAs are obviously different than single family HOAs, right? I mean, single family they have a little bit more flexibility. Like I live in a single family HOA, so I could add, Tesla charger to my garage. It was like $500. It wasn't like just to the 220 plug. It wasn't a big deal in my situation. But I've talked with people that live in multifamily HOAs, and they wanted to add a charger to their parking space in their garage, and it was in the thousands. I forget what the number was, but it was several thousand just to run a line to their parking space. They weren't trying to solve for the whole community. They simply wanted a charger in front of their space, and they had to deal with it. I don't remember all the problems they faced, but you're dealing with the utility. They have to run power. It is very, very difficult. And typically HOAs, I don't know anyone that has a good opinion of HOAs. uh, God bless them. Maybe they're volunteers. I'm sure there's good HOAs, and there are HOAs that strictly deal with the common area. They don't meddle in what you put in your backyard or that kind of stuff, uh, like the HOA that I'm dealing with. But there are some HOAs that have a lot of professionals and lawyers and engineers that have the time to devote this and do this right. Others are, I'm sorry, but some ego-driven people that want to tell what to do in your own unit or next door, or what color your patio should be, and that creates a lot of problems. So any kind of decision, constructive decision within that environment is going to be difficult. Before you even get to the logistics or the cost or the engineering or the power, you're interjecting a decision in that type of a body, which is going to be difficult.
Very difficult.
And lots of people that live in HOAs, they may have difficulty. Let's say if there's a cost assessment, let's say there's a decision, we should add X and it's going to cost Y. Well, if you're paying $300, $400, $600 a month in HOA fees, which is common in Southern California, in multifamily apartments, there's some much higher in downtown San Diego, $800, $1,200 a month HOA fees. So now add to it X. That's going to be a difficult pill to swallow for a lot of people,
It's going to be a very difficult pill to swallow. And, again, most people don't have EVs. And as you said, the desire right now is swaying. So it's kind of a little bit, I still think in the not even in the long run, in the five-year span, it's still going to be on, even you spoke about Tesla, but the Rivian SUVs and the Rivian trucks are really nice looking trucks. I've seen a lot of not those, both SUVs and trucks are on the road. They look great. I only see more every day. So again, I think you mentioned something too. They're not, these machines aren't having oil pushed in, put into them with, carbon being emitted. That's a huge burden on a body. If you don't have that oil coming in, there's going to be, I think less. I'm not sure about the statistics. Maybe you can speak more about that. I'm not sure if you know, but you're not putting oil into this machine, and that's a huge deal because oil will degrade the machine, regardless of even if it's engineered to withstand it. When you're not putting some like substance like that into it, it's going to be cleaner in the body of the machine itself and last
right
longer.
Look, it's a generational thing, right? I mean, if I grew up with a V8, Dodge, or a Corvette, or the sound that a combustion engine makes, I grew up with it. It has sentimental value. I worked in the garage with my dad. I mean, whatever your sentimental connection is to the combustion engine, oil and all, it is what it is. It's a part of you. I see lots of people that would never give up their combustion engine. And here we are in 2024. I also see lots of young people categorically denying the car that their parents would have considered awesome to have at 19 or 20, in favor of an electric car. Just the way it is, and of course, EVs get, like I said, the price drops in Teslas are a problem. Some, you've read about some safety issues with electric or batteries in general catching fire. That's a problem, that scares adopters off a little bit, but running out of juice in the dark highway. That could happen to you with gas, but it's hard to walk to the gas station with a battery in your hand. And in fact, that again creates a social entrepreneurship opportunity. Somebody that you can Google, I forget his name, a young man created mobile charging batteries to deal with stuck EV drivers that are driving around. So, whatever the problem is, somebody's trying to come up with a solution.
Yes.
To make it adoption, like you said, whether the arc is, it's coming down, it's going up, it's swinging up. I hear hydrogen is cleaner, better than electric. Yes. Will that, catch up? Okay. The California standard is zero emission. It doesn't matter whether it's electric or hydrogen or space technology. The point is, we want to go to clean energy. It'll take time, and it'll take some growing pains until we are able to realize it the way we want. And that's why hybrid cars are making a comeback. If people like to try hybrid, okay, maybe they'll try that before you go EV. Because going from a combustion engine you've been driving for 40 years to an electric car is a big jump. Not everyone's comfortable with that jump, and maybe a hybrid is a solution to help you with that transition.
Maybe you mentioned, some people your age love their combustible engines. Some people my age also love them too, and they also, they grew up as mechanics as teenagers, and they really have that love for gas and that revving sound. And but even that person who is a was a mechanic, he mentioned that hybrids, it's you're having two systems in one machine, so it's actually it can be pretty difficult to have, usually going one or the other. But
Right.
if you want to save emissions and be clean, and going to the hydrogen point, I don't hear anything about hydrogen cars.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a hydrogen car on, no one's
Yeah.
talking about it. So if it does come, it's going to be, after some engineer, inventor makes some great invention. And in the time being, it's electric vehicles. People,
Yeah.
I don't see that slowing down. Tesla's becoming very popular. Even in China, you know, BYD, I think, is the name of their EV manufacturer, the one who now produces more than Tesla. It's not slowing down in China either. So I see EV as the near, next
Yeah.
5-10 years.
Look, sometimes, I mean, let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's say hydrogen is the best technology since sliced bread. Sometimes the best technology doesn't get mass adoption, right? Just like Tesla was in a neck and neck race with Fisker Karma. Fisker Karma, I love that car. Fisker Karma, yeah, Fisker Karma. I love that car, but it also had some technical issues, and it just couldn't scale up fast enough. Tesla won that fight. Fisker got sold, I think, for 1.5 million, the company, and then now is coming back I think the biggest challenge from an adoption standpoint isn't all these technical issues, even hydrogen, electric, is choice. We like our choices in cars. And right now, look, when Tesla 10 years ago, when kind of was coming out, there weren't enough choices. There weren't like 10, 100. If every single car that you like, from Mercedes and BMW to Toyotas, every single model, every design came with combustion or electric, people would choose electric. But so electric cars just started out with not as many choices. And lots of people that look at Tesla, they don't like that they all look the same. In my community, sometimes you can stop at a four-way stop. Every car's a Tesla. I feel like I'm driving in some futuristic, movie where everything is an Audi, right? In the futuristic movies, every car is the same: white, black, red, whatever. White, black, gray. It's all the same. They all look the same. It doesn't matter whether it's a Y or X or Z or whatever. But as choices become more and more abundant, adoption, whatever the technology is, should also follow, because in this country we just love our choices. We want to, and that's why I think because a few years ago, when cars were bringing EVs or even hybrids like the Prius, I may have read this, but I've seen this. Car makers didn't want to produce an EV car that cannibalized their combustion lineup. So when BMW came up with that little turnip looking car, I mean, it's an electric car. It was horrible. When you think about a BMW, you think about some hot looking race car. I mean, a super nice sedan. You don't think about
Yes.
that car, whatever
No.
that was. Same with Prius. I mean, Toyota can make good looking cars, but they made the Prius box ugly because whoever chose to drive a Prius was strictly doing it on the mileage and making an environmental choice, not making a body design choice.
Wow.
Those are, I mean, consumer behavior when it comes to buying cars is one of the biggest things companies invest in, to try to understand what your choices are. And if BMW came out with, when it wasn't ready, two exact Model 3s, whatever, right? 325, 328s. One is electric, one is combustion. People would have loved the electric one. Why would you buy a gas guzzling, super unleaded? It's like, what, $6.50 at some point, $7, as opposed to electric. So now they're just catching up. Now they're, as you see, more and more models are becoming combustion, electric, hybrid. You're giving, if the production companies can absorb the production realignment to electric and combustion and hybrid, then they're beginning to add those to the lineup, and people are beginning to make choices. But it's just slow going. Right now, the problem is not enough EV charging stations in HOAs, in apartment buildings, even in shopping centers. You only have token charging stations. You have 3 or 4 in the back. The parking lot may be 2,000 parking spaces. Maybe you'll have 20, 30. Even if you have 200, it's still not enough for the amount of electric cars that could conveniently be charged when you're shopping, when you go to work. There's just not enough, and that's what we gotta align. As production cars begin to offer more and more EV lineups, every year you see more and more offerings. SUVs, right? Number one big seller. Trucks, they're struggling with the trucks because electric trucks, F-150 or Lightning, all that stuff, they're struggling with it because once you really begin to tow stuff, the battery range goes down. So they're struggling with that range to be able to really tow, 10,000 pounds. But it's coming. It's going to take a while.
Okay. It takes a lot more power to move that load than it would if you were just the car alone.
Right. And whoever is buying a truck at some point, if you're not living in the urban, central Manhattan or San Diego, you're probably going to tow stuff. And as soon as you add weight to that burden, then it's going to take down the range. And then if you're in Texas and you got to tow something for 300 miles, that's not going to work. You don't have enough charging stations every 100 miles in Texas. So that's a challenge. And by the way, adoption is different in different parts of the country. In the South, much, much slower. You go to Tennessee, Nashville, not as many EVs, if you see any. Southern California, very good. California, Bay Area, huge market. So we can't generalize the whole country. 50 states, 50 different, I would say, cultures and regulatory environments, different incentives. Cali VIP is California. Other states have different incentive packages to supplement the federal NEVI program. So those all play into how you can create more EV infrastructure to meet your demand.
Okay. And do you have any recommendations for, associations, whether they're commercial, HOAs, that, are thinking about EV adoption, but just thinking about it, maybe want to get, how do you think they should best approach that?
Look, I remember I talked with the city's development services director in San Diego, or someone told me, getting EV charging stations in HOAs is one of the number one questions she gets. So it's a priority. It's a known need because that's where the densest urban populations are. These 200, 300, 500 unit apartment buildings that are going up all over the place in San Diego, especially California, Southern California. So the HOA and the management company, I put this more in the management company than the HOA, because the HOA are volunteer people that work, and I'm going to assume the nicest good intent to them. Uh, uh, but the management companies that are paid professionals, they need to get smart on how to bring EV charging stations to their communities. They need to contact their local utilities. It all starts with the local utility. They all, whether it's SDG&E, PG&E, Southern California Edison, all of these California utilities, they have extensive EV charging programs, incentives, community outreach people. They'll come and talk to your HOA. That's what they do, all of them. So get smart on it. Engage your local utility. And begin to kind of ask questions of what is it going to take to bring EV charging to my community. And they can do site assessments. They can do, and now they'll send out engineers to your facility. It all starts with the utility, because whatever the brand is, whether it's ChargePoint or EVgo, it doesn't matter. There's always somebody ready, willing, and able to take your money to install EV charging stations. But the utility, which has a kind of a, I want to say, a dog in this race, they're the ones that you really need to kind of befriend, because you are already their customer. You are already paying electric and gas bills to that utility. So you as a customer have rights, and you're asking, hey, how do I add EV charging to my facility? And they will help you. Number one advice: start with the utility.
Okay. And you mentioned that they have a dog in this race. What do you mean by that?
Well, because you are their customer. So if my customer calls me and says, hey, how do I do X? I feel a duty to be responsive to that customer, right? It's not like you're some stranger from another state. You are my customer. Every month you pay me a electric and gas bill, and you're asking me, hey, how do I comply with state policies and federal policies that are pushing EV adoption and clean energy standards? They have multiple resources. Every utility does. Every utility has multiple resources to help their customers, and probably, depending on the utility, they've divvied up into regions or type of customer. Like, are you a business customer or residential? Okay, that goes somebody else. Residential, are you a multifamily or single family? That goes somebody else. Are you already have EV charging, or you want to add EV charging? I want to add EV. Okay, somebody. So a little bit of bureaucracy to get to the right person, but I'm generalizing between all the utilities. But they all have it. They all want to help you. They all want to help you get grants. They all want to help you get whatever incentives you can qualify for, and design, possibly design it. Also, apart from, if you've advanced and you've already had conversations with the utility, talking with the electric contractor, a reputable local electric contractor. They design it. They could do some of the stuff for you, but the reason I suggested the utility first is that to get smart on it first before you begin to talk to the electric utility, the electric contractors. Talk with the public utility. They're governed by the PUC in California. So talk with them, and then if you want to, you can also talk with electric contractors that do EV charging, commercial. These are commercial. These are not your local electric. Typically, they do commercial EV charging. They all have it. They all want the business. Sometimes they do preliminary designs for you. Sometimes they do all the legwork for you. So before you have to spend any money, these two calls, public utility and the local electric contractor, should be your 1 and 2 calls.
That's great. That's great information to know. Well, Shahriar, we talked about Evergy, we talked about real estate in terms of EVs and the challenges people are facing with EVs and the challenges of EV adoption and some other, interesting notes about oil and other forms of transportation. Are there any last comments or last topics or ideas that you'd like to leave our audience?
From a real estate investment standpoint, the more clean energy you go, the more value you create for your asset. So if I owned an apartment building uh, uh, and I wanted to add solar or EV charging, or even we didn't get to this, but there's various companies that help you decarbonize and increase the efficiency of your building, whether it's from windows and AC units and all kinds of other stuff. So the more you do that, the more value you create in your asset. So that's just without adding more units, without any necessarily big construction project, the more you invest in clean energy in your real estate asset, the more you increase the value of that asset for resale. So it's not very complicated. That investment will yield dividends, not in the long run, almost immediately, because you just created value. So why not?
My guest today has been Shahriar Afshar. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Shahriar.
Thanks for having me.